All right, good morning, good afternoon maybe, I'm not sure what time you will be having, you'll be seeing this, but anyway, we're here today with applied linguistics. Applied linguistics, I'd like to please start at, we will have a look at the contents. What we have here is applied linguistics, the need for applied linguistics, examples and procedures. This is all in section 1. The scope of applied linguistics, linguistics and applied linguistics, a difficult relationship. We will be having a look at these. Now, unfortunately, this booklet I have does not start with the need for applied linguistics. So if you could please find examples and procedures. We will start there, examples and procedures on page 5. On page 5, please. Now, if you look directly above examples and procedures, you will find the term applied linguistics written in bold italics. Now, if you see it just above examples and procedures, applied linguistics is the academic discipline concerned with the relation of knowledge about language to decision-making in the real world. This is one of the definitions of applied linguistics. It is an academic discipline, science, concerned with the relation of knowledge, the thing that it will concentrate on, or the thing that it will have a look at, is the relationship of knowledge about language, what you know about language, to decision-making in the real world, and how you make the decisions in the real world and the environment. Now, examples and procedures. On the basis of this definition, then, we can say that applied linguistics sets out to investigate problems in the world in which language is implicated. If we take the previous definition as a basis, we can understand that applied linguistics is its goal or its aim is to investigate problems in the world in which language is implicated. Both educational and social problems. So there can be an education and social problems as well, like those listed above in the previous page. Our provisional definition, or the first definition, is of course very abstract and general. It's still abstract and general. So we might give it some substance by considering a few concrete examples. We'll try to make it a little bit more substantial by using examples to explain what we mean. In what kind of problems is language implicated? Yeah, what kind of problems do you find language involved in and implicated? How might they be investigated, and how can they be investigated? Here are a number of imaginary but representative situations in which decisions about language need to be taken. Now, what we will have a look at is imaginary situations. They're not real, but they're representative. All right? And we'll see what, in which decisions about language need to be taken. What decisions can we take about language in these imaginary situations? The first one, the head teacher of a London school. So we have a head teacher of a London school is thinking of offering another foreign language in addition to French. All right, so the head school teacher, he wants to add a second foreign language in addition to French. The options are Chinese, the world's largest first language, Spanish, one of the world's largest and most widely distributed languages, or the Indian language Gujarati, the largest second language in the school and local community, and one which has approximately 43 million speakers worldwide. Which of these languages should be taught and why? Which of these languages should be taught and why? So this is the problem that our head teacher has. He wants to add a second language. He wants to add a second language to the already existing French, but he is unsure. He is unsure. Now, we have choices. What are our choices? Our choices are Chinese, which is the most popular, not popular, but it is the largest language in the world, most widely distributed. And we have Spanish, one of the world's largest languages, or Gujarati. Now, this is interesting. The largest second language in the school and local community. What this tells us is this school, which is in London, it's obviously in a community which is an Indian community, because as it says here, the largest second language in the school and local community. Second language in the school means that most of the children in the school will speak English and Gujarati anyway. So what do you think, or which language should they use, and how, and more importantly is what kind of questions you can ask to choose the best language? What kind of information do you need to find out to choose what the best language? So that's the first problem. Head teacher wants to add a second language. Doesn't the choices we have Chinese, Spanish, or Indian, Gujarati, which is the second language in the school anyway. How do we make the choice, and what kind of questions do we ask? Now, the second situation, what we have a business executive who wants to learn Japanese in preparation for taking up a post in Tokyo. So we have a business executive who has a new job in Tokyo, and he wants to take up Japanese to prepare himself. There are 3 courses available. Course 1 has strong emphasis on learning to write. So the first course, the emphasis is on learning to write. Course 2 focuses on the spoken language, and the second course focuses on speaking, claiming that learning to write too early is demotivating. If you write too early, because it's very difficult and you will make a lot of mistakes, you will be demotivated, you will be disappointed a lot. It does, however, explain the rules of Japanese grammar in English, but it uses English to explain Japanese grammar and use translation, and it uses translation. Course 3 approach is natural. The approach of course 3 is natural, with no translation or explanation of rules, but only a series of communicative classroom activities and tasks. You will have activities in the classroom. There is no translation, no explanation of rules. Just a set of activities that you do around the classroom, communicative activities and tasks. Which course is the best choice and why? Again, put yourself in this businessman's place. You have these 3 courses, and at the moment, right, please understand, we are discussing, so I'm not looking for what's the correct answer or what's the wrong answer. We're looking for the correct questions to be asked about the courses, and then we can get to the answer. So we have 3 different courses. One concentrates on the writing form. Yes, that was it. Emphasis on the writing. That's the first course. Course 2 focuses on the spoken language. It also explains the rules of grammar and English, and you can use translation. Course 3 is natural, with no translation or explanation of the rules, but only a series of activities. Which one would be the best? What question should we ask? Now, we have the third situation. A business in the USA exports industrial machinery to South America. So we have a business in the USA, exports industrial machinery, big machines for factories, that kind of thing, to South America, somewhere in South America. There are frequent financial, legal, and safety documents to translate. Though, because there's an export and an import, there are documents, مستندات, which are financial, مالية, legal, قانونية, and safety, أمنية. Documents to translate, مستندات, you have to translate them. And it is important that these are accurate. مهم جدا أن يكون دقيقة. The firm employs 2 translators. So we have 2 translators working for this firm. Juan, a 60-year-old Cuban immigrant who once ran a similar business. The first person is Juan. He's 60 years old from Cuba. He's an immigrant, and a long time ago, or some point in the past, he had a similar business to this. So from this I can induce, or I can take that Juan has experience in this field. And a 22-year-old Jemima, and a young lady who's 22-year-old, her name is Jemima, who studied Spanish literature at a prestigious university. So she's a student of Spanish literature from a well-known university, prestigious university. Juan complains to the management. Juan, the older gentleman, is complaining to the management that Jemima's translation of some safety regulation is full of errors. That the translation that Jemima is doing is that there's a lot of mistakes in it, especially for the safety equipment stuff. Jemima says this is nonsense. And there is a terrible row. There is a big argument, a terrible row. None of the managers speak Spanish themselves. The managers, they don't speak Spanish. How can they judge between them? How do you know which person is correct? Or how do you actually judge between these 2 people? You have the Juan, the older gentleman with so much experience, who used to have a similar business, and you have Jemima, who is a Spanish literature student from a very well-known university, and they both think that the other is wrong. The management, they don't speak Spanish. How do you solve these problems? What can we do? Now, the last but not least, the last situation that we will have a look at is the Zram Shara. Zram Shara is a small fictional island in the Indian Ocean. Fictional island, it doesn't exist. It's in the Indian Ocean. The Zram Sharan language uses a unique alphabet developed from the Phoenician alphabet. So, the Zram Sharan language uses a unique alphabet which has been developed from the Phoenician alphabet, الحروف الفينيقية, when traders came to the island 3,000 years ago. When the traders or merchants, tujar, came to the island more than 3,000 years ago. Zram Shara's finance minister, Wazir al-Maliya, argues that for a reform in which this alphabet will be replaced by the Roman alphabet. The finance minister wants to change this alphabet to the Roman alphabet, the one used in English and many other languages. This change, he argues, why does he want this change? What is his argument? Will make the island's life easier and more prosperous with benefits for English teaching. This change, he argues, will make the life in the island a lot more easier, prosperous, everybody will be richer, with benefits for English teaching, computer mediated communication, trade, tijara, and tourism. Is this the best policy? Is this the best way forward? Is this the best way forward? Okay, now, let's see how some of these issues were solved, or what was done about these. In responding to such language-related problems, we can draw upon common sense. When we face problems like this in language, we can draw on common sense, mantiq, and experience to judge what action should be taken. So you can judge, or you can know what action should be taken. But in recommending a particular course of action, we might benefit both from more information and from more systematic approach. But if we can get the full benefit of the situation, we might be best to get more information, hence more research, do more research in subjects. Let's say, for example, the head teacher in London. We should probably ask try to ask the people in the local community what do they think, and ask the children in the school. More research, more information, and that's what is meant here. And a more systematic approach. For example, we might study what other people have said on similar matters. We will go and see throughout history, have a look at similar situations and see what people did then, or what was the best course of action. Similar matters. We might make investigations of our own. Make your own investigation. Have your own research. Look into this. Investigation of our own, perhaps by interviewing the parents and children in the school. Observing some Japanese lessons. So, by interviewing the parents and children in the school, that's for the head teacher of the London school. Observing some Japanese lessons, we will be looking at if you'd observe some Japanese lessons and you have a look, maybe you will find that the written-based course could be for you. It may be easier for you, but not easier for someone else. Someone else might find that using the second course is better, and so on. Japanese, consulting a third Spanish speaker. The problem between Juan and Jemima. Do you remember we said management couldn't speak Spanish? So how do you solve this problem? Maybe if you get a third party or a third person who has experience in Spanish, who's well known, then you can ask them for the best answer. So on. And when so sadly often happens, the advice we offer, well informed though it might be, you give advice and it's well informed because you've done a lot of research, you've asked a lot of questions, it is ignored for political or commercial reasons. Sometimes it can be ignored because of politics and because of commercial reasons, maybe not enough money involved, not enough profits that come from it, right? Or just plain and simple out of prejudice. We might wish to form pressure group to put across our case more effectively. It is these processes of study, reflection, investigation and action which constitute applied linguistics as an academic discipline. So please pay attention to the last two lines. It is these processes of study, reflection, investigation, and action which constitute applied linguistics as an academic discipline. You might get this in a true and false or a direct question. Maybe what constitutes applied linguistics as an academic discipline? You would probably say process of study, reflection, investigation, and action. All right, now let's have a look at the scope of linguistics. Scope of applied linguistics. Since language is implicated in so much of our daily lives, there is clearly a large and open-ended number of quite disparate activities. Language is involved in everything that we do in our lives. We need language for everything. There is clearly a large and open-ended number of quite disparate activities in which applied linguistics is relevant. So, even with these examples, the scope of applied linguistics remains rather vague. The scope of applied linguistics, or the field in which applied linguistics will be working, is still unclear, quite vague. To get a more specific or a more precise definition of the field, we need to be more specific. We have to be more specific. We need not just to give examples, but to classify the kinds of problems we are concerned with in a systematic way. And so map out the scope of our area. In other words, we need to refer specific instances to more general conceptual areas of study. These areas can be identified under these headings as follows. All right, now, we need, in other words, we need to refer to specific instances to more general concepts. Now, the scope, more general conceptual areas of study, these areas can be identified under these headings as follows. So the scope of linguistics, we can define it under these, identified under these headings. Language and education. This area includes first language education, when the child studies their home language or languages. This is the first language education. Additional language education, often divided into second language education, when someone studies their society's majority or official language, which is not their home language. And foreign language education, when someone studies the language of another country. When someone studies the language of another country. Now, first language is, when another word is your mother tongue, is what language or languages you learn at home, all right, from your parents. That's the first language. Additional languages goes into two sections. The first section is called second language and foreign language. The important thing here to remember is foreign language and second language are not the same. They are not the same. They have a different meaning. Please be careful with these. When you say a second language, it means it is official in that country. Let's say Algeria and French. First language in Algeria is Arabic. The second language is French. Why? Because it's official. You can use it for documents. You can use it for bureaucratic paperwork, all that kind of thing you can do. But let's say foreign language, English in Libya is a foreign language, not a second language, because it's not official. Our official language is Arabic. Therefore, English, it is widespread, but it's not official, therefore it's a foreign language. So there's a difference between second language and foreign language. Please remember that. We have clinical linguistics, the study and treatment of speech and communication impairments, whether hereditary, developmental, or acquired through injury, stroke, illness, or age. Clinical linguistics, we use it to study and treat the problems that occur in speech, whether these problems are hereditary, passed down through the family from generation to generation, developmental, something that you have developed, or acquired through injury, maybe through a car crash or something like that. You fell down, you injured yourself, stroke, illness, that kind of thing. Language testing, the assessment and the evaluation of language achievement and proficiency, both in first and additional languages, and for both general and specific purposes. So language testing, we use the assessment and evaluation of language achievements and the proficiency, both in first and additional language. So you find it in the first and the second language. We do testing just to know and evaluating to know, well, the testing can be for specific purposes or just general. Now, the second scope of applied linguistics we have is language, work, and law. Language, work, and law. This area includes workplace communication, the study of how language is used in the workplace and how it contributes to the nature and power relations of different types of work. So we have workplace communication, the study of how language is used in the workplace, the study of how language is used in the workplace, and how it contributes or it helps to the to nature and the power of the relations of different types of work, between the relationship and the power of different types of work. Language planning, the making of decisions often supported by legislation about an official status of the language and their institutional use, including their use in education. Language planning is making decisions often supported by legislation, by the government, about making the official status of the language. Now, forensic linguistics is the deployment of linguistic evidence, the use of linguistic evidence in criminal and other legal investigations. For example, to establish the authorship of a document or a profile of a speaker from a tape recording. So the forensic linguistics is actually a very interesting field that you can actually sometimes use language as a means of investigating. You can, you can find that people will have a lot of problems when it comes to maybe the wills, and someone leaves a lot of money, and then the families will have disputes. Someone will bring a paper and say, I've had it signed from this, so they ask a linguistic expert to have a look at this paper to see the actual date and the time, and they can actually tell you which one is copied, which one's real, which one's fake, which one's older, that kind of thing. Now, we have language, information, and effect. This area includes literally stylistics, the study of the relationship between linguistic choices and effects in literature. What choices what are your linguistic choices? What words are you going to choose? And the effects they have in literature. Critical discourse analysis, or CDA. Now, at this point, I would like to point out that abbreviations are quite important. So in the exam, you will find CDA and you will be asked to write the full abbreviation. So any abbreviation that we come across from now on, please pay attention to. Like CDA here, you should be circling this or putting an asterisk next to it. This is important. Critical discourse analysis, the study of the relationship between linguistic choices and effects in persuasive uses of language, of how these indoctrinate or manipulate, for example, in marketing and politics, and the counteracting of these through analysis. So we'll have to study the relationship between the word choices and the effect in persuasive use of the language. How do you persuade people? Do you use the right word to influence someone to do something you want, or to make a choice you want them to make? And this you will find a lot of examples in marketing and in politics. Politicians are the worst at this. And marketing, if you give you an example of how they manipulate the words in marketing, let's say examples, adverts about toothpaste. They'll say 80% of doctors recommend this toothpaste, and you think 80% of doctors in the world recommend that I use this toothpaste. Oh my God, I'm going straight to the shops to buy this. What you find is they've asked 100 doctors, and 80 of them said that they would recommend it. And I mean, they've not done anything legally wrong. That is 80% of the doctors they asked that actually recommended it. But you see, when the advert comes on, I don't think they've asked 100 doctors. I think it's 80% of the doctors in the world. So this is the critical discourse analysis. And being able to understand and detect and analyze what linguistic choices and the effects that they have. Translation and interpretation. The formulation of principles underlying the perceived equivalence between a stretch of language and its translation, and the practices of translating written text and interpreting spoken language. Translation is an interpretation is translation of a piece of text into another language, but translation happens to texts and interpretation happens to the spoken language. Like, for example, you have if you've ever seen the United Nations meetings, they usually have an earpiece. This earpiece, there is an interpreter, someone who is interpreting them. So this is interpretation. The main difference here, to understand, to translate, you need a text, nas. Interpret, you interpret the spoken language. Now, information design, the arrangement and the presentation of written language, including issues relating to typography and layout choices, of medium and effective combination of language with other means of communication such as pictures and diagram. Information design, you have to design the way the information is being represented on a piece of paper in front of the student, the person who's reading it. And there are also issues related to typography and layout. Typography is the study, I think typography, effective combination, the study of the choices, the word choices and the letters and the way that it is represented on the page, the layout. Now, you can also use pictures and diagrams. Lexicography, the planning and the compiling of both monolingual and bilingual dictionaries and other language reference works such as the thesauri. Right? Lexicography is the combining to make mono or bilingual dictionaries. All of these areas fall within our definition of applied linguistics and are claimed as areas of inquiry by organizations and journals concerned with this discipline. They've all been claimed as areas of importance by organizations and people who are concerned with this discipline. Yet, in practice, some of them are more independent than others. But when it comes to practicality, some of them are more independent than others. Clinical linguistics and translation studies are in particular are often regarded as independent discipline. These two are looked at as an independent discipline, independent science, if you would like. Among the others, some, such as the study of foreign language learning, are more active as areas of academic inquiry than others, and some others are more active in the research areas than the others. It will not be possible in this short book to cover all of these areas in detail. Inevitably, examples will be selective and many important matters will be omitted. The aim is rather to seek out key themes and set out the ideas and procedures that underline and unite their study. All right, okay, so that was the scope of linguistics. The question you might face would be is to actually talk about the scope of linguistics. Can you discuss the scope of linguistics? In this sense, what you would probably say is the scope of linguistics can be identified under three headings. You have the last line in your paragraph, use that. The areas or the scope of linguistics can be identified under these three headings. Language and education, which includes first language education, additional language education, clinical linguistics, and language testing. Language, work, and law, and you mention what's in there. And last but not least, language information and effect, and this area includes. Now, we have linguistics and applied linguistics, a difficult relationship. Linguistics and applied linguistics, a difficult relationship. One way of approaching the practical and the professional problems of these areas is by relating them to what has been said about language in linguistics. One way of approaching the practical and professional problems, and one way we can counter these problems is by relating them to what has been said about language and linguistics. Get them closely or see what others have said about language and linguistics. The academic, which is this is a definition, please underline this. The academic discipline concerned with the study of language in general. So what is applied linguistics, sorry, it's the academic discipline concerned with the study of language in general. And language in general. Like any discipline, linguistics looks for generalities. All right, okay, well, I think Timon will have to stop here today. Thank you very much. We'll continue this. But what I will do next time is I will start this from the beginning so everybody can be, we're on the same page. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.